Welcome to the Chattanooga Writers Guild monthly program. My name is Mark Anderson, president of the Writers Guild. Tonight we're with Paul Luikart.
Hey, Mark.
Hey there. And I will introduce Paul. Paul is the author of the short story collections Animal Heart by Hyperborea Publishing and Brief Instructions by Ghostbird Press, 2017. His work is included in the 2019 Best Microfiction Anthology, and his story Barclay Station won the Nassau Review's 2019 Writer Award for Fiction. He is an adjunct professor of fiction writing at Covenant College, and he and his family live here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
It's all true. It's all true.
And we are going to talk tonight about writing and specifically short fiction or microfiction.
Yes.
And so first, we want to get to know Paul a little bit better, his writing experience. We want to know about your journey, your writing journey. Why did you choose fiction?
Oh, man. I think it's a really good question. I always loved story. Just sort of as a way to engage the world. And in my undergrad experience, I had a little bit of, I took classes in short story writing and poetry, but my major was poetry writing. And I after that undergrad experience, I thought I didn't give up on poetry, but I was like, man, I'm not a poet. And I took some time off from writing. And then, a few years after I graduated, I kind of couldn't, I just felt like I needed to write again, and I came back to fiction writing and really felt differently about it than I did several years prior. I really loved it sort of even more. I think some life experience helps to give me something to write about. It always helps for sure. So, and then I just loved writing after that, fiction writing.
We can get back to this later, but poets and fiction writers have a theory that some of the best do both. So, this would be an interesting essay article.
Yes.
Shakespeare was excellent at both.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Poe, Emily Bronte.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something about words.
Yeah, I think poetics are sort of the building block of good fiction. Your work has to have a poetic quality to be enjoyable, I think. Whatever that's different for a lot of different people, but.
So what do you think has influenced your style? Who are your style formation people?
Style icons? That's a good question. I love the work of Cormac McCarthy. I love the work of Nelson Algren. I've been reading some short fiction lately by Lydia Davis, and her writing is very poetic, speaking of poetic, but she applies that to storytelling. So those are three authors right now that I would say that I really want to, if I could carve out a space. They're very unique. They're each very unique. If I could carve out a space the way they've carved out their spaces, I would be pretty happy with my own.
So since I'm not really familiar with them, maybe you can tell me what elements are more of an element kind of thing that has formed you.
So take McCarthy. Like, he's very stark. He doesn't waste words. Each word that he uses seems to be very curated, very crafted. He uses words that doesn't do a lot of fluff. There's a lot of very concrete visuals, especially of stark landscape. Landscape setting plays very heavily into his stuff. So setting almost becomes character in some of his work, which is, I think, a very interesting technique. And I like that. I think that's a pretty cool thing to do. He seems to have mastered it, which makes me jealous.
So, what would be the characteristics of writing that you want to avoid? I was like, you read something and you think,
yeah,
I better not write like that. Avoid that guy.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to tell you a story, and I don't mean to crap on, I'll just tell it. So I just finished it yesterday. I read a novel by James Patterson, and the title of the novel was called Now You See Her. And like Patterson is, he's however many books he's published, like 300 books. I don't know. I mean, he's got book after book after book. Yeah. And so I feel like I've always, sort of given him crap. Like, well, I'm a literary writer. I don't write like James Patterson. So, but then it seemed unfair. So I said, well, let me read a James Patterson book. And a couple of things stood out to me that made me think, I don't want to do that. So there are a few in this one book that I read. There were a couple of sort of Deus Ex Machina techniques where out of nowhere the day was saved. So somebody was in trouble. They were about to face their doom, and somewhere out of nowhere that wasn't inherent sort of to the scene that was being built, something came along and stopped the person from, getting killed or found out. And to me, that's a little bit sort of like a cheap move, because I think doing that knocks down the good work you've done to set the scene, and to say, oh, nope, sorry, this tension isn't going to end with the person having a moral confrontation with themselves or with another character. Instead, it just sort of gets whisked away by the appearance of the hero or whatever. So I think it misses an opportunity to go deeper into the character when you kind of use that technique. Now it makes for a page turner. So you're going to keep reading the book, and you're going to keep following the plot. But I think unfortunately it misses some deeper elements to do that. And I noticed that a couple times in this book I read by Patterson, and he had a ghostwriter too. But
what do you think makes characters come alive?
I think like a moral. Yeah, I think like a moral crisis of some kind. It doesn't have to be big, but it can be. I think one of the things so if they have to confront something within themselves, that situation in a story where they have to confront a value that they hold, and whether that value will stand up or not is really interesting and makes for a good character, sort of deepens a character. Or if they have to confront sort of something that goes against their morals out there in the world, if you have a moral character going up against an immoral character, how will that change both of those characters, if at all? So I think when the writer delves into a character's value system, even it doesn't have to be, even if you just sort of touch the surface of that, I think that makes for interesting and richer characters.
As a novice writer, if I'm trying to describe something and I lean on adjectives a lot, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I like one adjective at a time, personally. You could load a sentence with 3 or 4. And it's like, well, you have to choose to make it more vivid of a description. I would say choose the most accurate adjective versus a few that might be fairly close. Or choose your favorite one. I end up doing that sometimes. I'll maybe have a sentence with 3 or 4 adjectives, and I'll say, well, I like this one best. And so I'll sort of get rid of the other ones. So I'll start with maybe 3 or 4 just to sort of give myself some options, and then pare it down to the one that works best and the way I like the sound of it in the sentence. And that most accurately describes what I'm trying to go for. So yeah, so like not if too many waters it down.
I think for my own, I'll answer my own question quickly.
Yeah.
I think I admire writing that sounds like the person sitting there talking, telling a story.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that would make like Mark Twain the consummate, story.
Yeah. Just a storyteller. He's an excellent storyteller.
And if there's too much adjectives, well, I don't talk that way.
Right.
And all of a sudden the words are in the way, and you're reading the story and you're all engaged. You can see it happen in your mind. And then suddenly you got these words that are flowery words or something. And it's like if you were watching a movie. Imagine yourself watching a movie and suddenly you see the shadow of the cameraman over on the side, or the
right.
sticking into the screen. It'd be like,
Yes.
it ruins the movie because you're thinking,
Yeah.
there's a cameraman right there.
Yeah. Like you see the artifice becomes apparent. Like, oh, something is breaking into my flow of the story that's telling me it's fake. Like it's not a real story. And I want to be in the story as if it were real. I think you're right. I think Mark Twain is sort of just the perfect storyteller.
There's too, but when I start hearing an author use words that doesn't sound, I don't know. That's just my thing. Like,
no, I'm with you. I think John Updike does that a lot. You're like, just chill out, dude. Like, you're getting in your own way, and it's nice that you know these big giant words. And there's a place for that, I guess, but you have to get out of your way.
You should make them buy those words. Say, okay, to write this story, you got $100 to spend.
Yeah.
Spend it all. Adjectives are $5 each.
I think that would be an excellent rule. And yeah, you'd have people that would blow their budget on chapter 1.
Yeah, there you go. Let's move on. We are going to get to reading some of your works.
Good heavens.
Maybe we should move right now that we've talked this harsh criticism. Let's go ahead and read some of yours.
All right, let's tear these apart. That's where, as a writer, you can go. You can lean on the rules were meant to be broken, and if it works, it works, and then you can just justify everything.
Well, and it's art, and we're all aspiring artists.
It's true, absolutely.
The Lady Who Loved Garbage Bags.
Yes.
This is in the book Brief Instructions.
Indeed.
By Ghostbird Press. The Lady Who Loved Garbage Bags. Should I let you read it, or should I read it? You can read it if you want.
Okay, I'll read it. The Lady Who Loved Garbage Bags. What can I tell you about the lady who loved garbage bags? 2 big black hefty bags stuffed with who knows what. She slept on the sidewalk with them every night for 2 weeks, in front of her house in Humboldt Park. Sometimes they were pillows, other times they were like her lovers. She'd be lying there in the morning with her arms around them, spooning these fucking garbage bags. The night before she disappeared, there was a huge thunderstorm, knocked out power in the whole neighborhood, tore down tree limbs in everybody's yards. When the sun came up, there she was, drenched. There were little pools in the folds of the bags, water beaded up all down the sides. She sniffed the air and kicked the bags, these soft, easy taps. When I got home from school, she was gone, and I never saw her again. But the bags were still there. I'm going to open them up, Ma, I said. They were squashed and cockeyed, sitting there like rotten pumpkins. Leave them be, Rafa, Ma said. What if there's something valuable in there, I said, money or jewels or something, you never know. She was crazy. You let them be, she said, in her don't press your luck tone. So I let them be. I caught her later fumbling with her rosary beads while she stared out the window at the garbage bags. Her beads were a nervous habit for her, the way other people bite their fingernails or click their pens. The sun was going down and the last of the sunlight turned her black, a burnt outline of Ma sitting there in a burnt outline of her favorite easy chair. Ma, church ain't for 2 days. I was already thinking up lies I could tell to get out of it. Hush, Rafa, she hissed. God is talking to me.
Hmm.
The lady who loved garbage bags.
Is it about the lady or mom or Rafa's mama?
Yeah, I think it's more. I think it's more. It tells us more about Rafa's mom, or
Hmm.
she's the sort of the key character.
Yeah. She says when she's saying don't mess with those, she's like, don't disrespect those. Those
Right.
all of a sudden this homeless person with their bags uh, to Rafa's mama, I mean, many people would have just gone out and trashed them real quick. Let's
Sure.
go see what's in there, even
Absolutely.
just dirty clothes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think she's got a level of.
Dirty clothes and bags of crackers that she got from the Salvation Army, and
Yes.
saving them for when she's yeah.
Just hungry on the street. Yeah. I. That's right, and I think the mother hopefully recognizes a bit of dignity in that character that Rafa has missed, and is hopefully she is understanding enough to try to pass that dignity onto her kid. Yeah, that's my
And
take on it.
she's praying. So it's interesting you describe these things without a lot of interpretation, which let's see what I could point out in here. The last line, hush, Rafa, she hissed. God is talking to me. That's a nice ending.
Thanks.
Um, let me ask, since what I've read in here, all the characters are struggling with some sort of mental, what's the proper words? They have difficulties,
Yeah,
mental illness of various degrees. And you have a background. Your bio says that you currently manage a homeless shelter here in Chattanooga, right?
I had done that for a while, and right now I'm working with the Chattanooga Housing Authority with low income people a lot of people who were formerly homeless and now they're housed. So we're trying to help them stay housed.
But going back, what, 15 years or your career has been in dealing with people. Well, maybe you can describe it, but what has your career been? Why do you have experience with these people?
Yeah, that has been sort of my day job, quote unquote, has been in social services to people who are homeless or like sort of on the verge of homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in Phoenix, Arizona for a while, and Chicago for a long time, and now in Chattanooga. So yeah, so that's what I'm fortunate as a writer to have something that I do during the day that I enjoy doing, that I like to do, and that actually feeds my writing. That's not to say I wouldn't accept a $1 billion book deal and quit the day job, but I mean, I think that is something that matters to me to do, to work with people who are experiencing homelessness or have experienced homelessness. But yeah.
Just before we leave this one, go to the next one. I want to look at this one line. She sniffed the air, kicked the bags, these soft, easy taps. So the night before she disappeared, there's a huge thunderstorm, knocked out power in the whole neighborhood, tore down tree limbs in everybody's yards. When the sun came up, there she was, drenched. There were little pools in the folds of the bags, water beaded up all down the sides. She sniffed the air. That's something that's an interesting picture because you think of a dog or someone doing that, kick the bags. But maybe it was a fresh morning. Kick the
Yeah.
bag, soft, even taps. When I got home from school, she was gone. I never saw her again. Interesting. You just don't know the stories of people in those situations.
Right. I think that's true. And I think in that particular case with those actions, so the sniffing and the tapping the bags, I wanted to give that character a little bit of depth in that, to your point, she's taking these actions that seem a little odd and we're not sure why, but we also assume there's some sort of reason behind that, even if it is related to, a mental illness or whatever it is. So she's not a flat character. She's got something going on that's motivating her to do those things.
And I don't see a lot of adjectives talking. You don't describe her hair, all this.
Yeah.
You don't go into. Maybe part of it is you let our because we've all seen this person,
right?
So our own imagination can fill in those blanks.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think a good writing will. It's participatory, so the writer provides these words, but the reader supplies the imagination responding to the words. And so I think a good piece of writing will allow the writer some space to imagine that circumstance, whatever it is. And to your point about too many adjectives, I think in that case you are taking away some of the fun for the reader to supply perhaps what this person physically looks like if you don't give the full description of their hair and their face and whatever. The reader also is adept at filling in some of those blanks too, and can participate in the creating of the story that way. And a good writer, I think, will find ways for the reader to engage like that.
Cool. Let's go on to the next one.
Yes.
Acting funny with a gun.
Yes. We can get there. I had it, but okay, there we go. Acting funny with a gun. He's been acting funny with a gun. Out back by the woodshed, I see his boot prints in the snow from the back door. I hear him giggling. He twirls that pistol on his finger like a cowboy with too many whiskey slugs in him. All alone. He fires at ducks and muskrats and corn stalks that bust apart in pops of yellow splinters. He says, "One day, May, to the moon, blammo, straight to the moon." The dog is dead, the kids are gone, the neighbor's barn burned and they cleared out. Lately I've felt my heart flip-flop. I have to beat my chest and lean on the stove and ride it out. But still I watch him, a sliver of a man, born of the gray sky, shaking like a deranged puppet, firing and laughing and dancing like mad, till he runs out of steam and lays down like a corpse between the mutilated stalks.
Wow. Well, so I'm not sure what to say about this. This is so short.
Yeah. It's not.
Why isn't this part of a story?
Yeah. Yeah.
And where's the rest of the story?
Yeah, like what is she gonna have a heart attack? Like what's going on? Is he gonna kill her? Oh no.
First time I read it, I thought this was a child with a gun out playing.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. That would be extra scary.
Well, I thought it was maybe with a play gun, And
it's like, no, this guy's really nice.
Kids do. Out and back.
Yes.
I'm gonna watch some kid playing with a play gun. But it's not a child, it's an adult.
Yes.
And two paragraphs and one line there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Himself, but then at the last, well, let's read this. I guess we got time. We should just read parts of it again slowly.
Yeah.
Like a poem, it should be read slowly.
Yes.
In acting funny with a gun, out back by the woodshed, I see his boot prints in the snow from the back door. I hear him giggling. He twirls that pistol on his finger like a cowboy with too many whiskey slugs in him. So that is something that kids, he is being childlike.
Yes, I think that's true. He's lost his adult sensibilities to a degree.
All alone, he fires at ducks and muskrats and corn stalks that bust apart in pops of yellow splinters. That's a nice little poetic line there. Bust apart in pops of yellow splinters.
Yeah, I like the hard
Bust apart
P's
in
and
pops
P's.
of yellow splinters. And the vision, I can visualize that.
Yeah. Good.
And he says, one day, May, would that be May or mate?
May, like the...
That must be the wife?
Yes.
Okay. To the moon, blammo, straight to the moon. The dog is dead, the kids are gone. The neighbor's barn burned and they cleared out. Lately, I've felt my heart flip-flop. I have to beat my chest and lean on the stove and ride it out. But still I watch him, a sliver of a man, born of the gray sky, shaking like a deranged puppet, firing and laughing and dancing like mad, till he runs out of steam and lays down like a corpse between the mutilated stalks. A sad picture. Maybe the guy has Alzheimer's, maybe it's other things, but it sounds like that May, her description is how come this one doesn't have a happy ending? Oh.
I don't know. It was all a dream, and she woke up and everything was fine. I wanted to I'm definitely, as a writer, interested in like the tragic. And so I think a lot of when I sit down to write, it's inspired by tragedy. And so I wanted to create in this little piece here, obviously, like you had mentioned, he has become childlike for whatever reason, like Alzheimer's, or he's sort of gone crazy or whatever. And here we have his wife who is having essentially a heart attack and can't take care of herself. So she feels she can't take care of herself because she has to keep an eye on this guy who's sort of lost his mind. So it's perhaps that dual tragedy that was interesting to me, that one, he's lost his mind, and two, we have this other person who's involved in this relationship who is sacrificing herself perhaps to death to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't do something really crazy with the gun, or even accidentally, hurt himself or somebody else. So yeah, I like tragedy layered upon tragedy.
Well, it leaves us with some sense of pending, something's got to change. This is coming to some sort of point where, but you don't take us through there. You just leave us hanging torturously.
Yes. So keeping the tension sort of intact versus creating it and then breaking it in some way.
But the point is that when we experience that sense, the feeling, it's a shared human experience. I share my experience with that lady in the kitchen watching this happen. Her sense of her own mortality and weakness.
Yes.
And I get a taste of that. Maybe it's just a hard taste to handle because it's just sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for sure, I think it can be tough to read that, feel empathy for her perhaps, and then not have a resolve, at least in the story. Because the ending in that sense isn't written. The story ends with this sort of heightened, tense sort of sound that doesn't get resolved. And you're a musician, and about, so you have one chord should resolve another chord. Yeah. And there's that sense I kind of like in fiction where you play that dissonant chord and then you don't do anything else. And leave the reader with that sense of tension and perhaps expectation that goes on sort of in perpetuity, so to speak. And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go. The last story we're going to read is this Worried Life Blues.
Yes.
I really like this. It's,
Thank you.
I wonder if, well, we should let you read it.
All right. Yeah.
One thing I'm going to notice in writing dialogue is technique. It's hard to learn.
Yeah.
Dialogue in this, and it's hard to make because you have to put in there someone said it. Well, you don't always have to say that, but that
Right.
kind of breaks the flow of the conversation. And
Right.
you seem to do well here by minimizing that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and read it.
Okay. Worried Life Blues. There were crows perched along the roof ridge. Rain rolled off the roof in long silver strings and spattered the mud next to the house. Underneath the maple tree just off the crooked porch, a scrawny figure stood and smoked. He was shivering and crossed and uncrossed his arms and brought the cigarette to his teeth and blew out the smoke in thin gray lines. After a long time, the front door squealed open and the figure under the tree froze. The doctor was on the porch. He took out a cigarette and lit it and threw the match away into the mud. You want to come up here, or you want me to come out there? The doctor said. You come out here. The doctor stepped into the rain. When he was under the tree with the man, he said, Your Katie didn't make it through. I'm sorry, John. What about the baby? A boy, healthy, a little scrawny, like you, but healthy. They finished their cigarettes and stood shoulder to shoulder. The boy needs a name, the doctor said. I don't want to give him one. I've got to have something to write down. I don't give a damn one way or the other. You could call him John, a junior. What do you think that'll set him up for? Loading coal like a slave every day just like his daddy? No, sir, I won't call him John. What about Bobby? You ever know any Bobbies that turned into men worth a damn? No, I guess not. Ain't no name in this whole wide world worth a damn. When the doctor went back inside, he scribbled something on his paper and watched the baby. It was wrapped in a wool blanket in the cradle on the floor. The baby's aunt, a bug-eyed woman with red hair, said, He's asleep. Quietest one I ever brought into the light of day. Ain't cried yet. The aunt seemed proud. The doctor packed his things and stepped back out onto the porch. He pulled the brim of his hat lower. The baby's father wasn't under the maple tree anymore. There he was by the side of the house with a rusty spade, shoveling up the mud, slinging it into a heap, slashing at buried tree roots, stabbing at the ground, the black-red earth, turning it over and over and over. Worried Life Blues.
Bad story. I'm going to have a friend who writes a lot of sad songs, and I like when I sing some songs, I do.
Yeah.
Sad. I think we should just have a sad song contest.
Yeah.
So let's just go with the sad story contest.
Yeah. There's a bunch out there.
But it's so real.
I've written many of them. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that realism.
It really is real. Noel, this young man, John, it's interesting. You use the word man for him in John is out underneath the tree, and that says the doctor stepped into the rain when he was under the tree with the man. He said, Your Katie didn't make it through. Interesting. I mean, you might have called him with the boy. No, he's a father. He's a young man. Sounds like, and works in the coal mines.
Yeah.
And judging from the father came to the house, they weren't at the hospital doing a birth, so it was an in-home birth. It might have. So this might be a few years ago.
Right.
Rain, and nothing like a rainy day to set the mood.
Yeah. Of course this would happen in the rain.
Rain rolled off the root in long silver strings, splattered the mud next to the house. You poet, you. Under the
There it
main,
is again.
just off the crooked porch, a scrawny figure stood and smoked. He was shivering, crossed and uncrossed his arms, and brought the cigarette to his teeth and blew out the smoke in thin gray lines. You got a full image right there, you know, I mean.
Yeah. I'm sure you know what this is like, but when you're writing and you grab an image that you're fond of in your imagination, it's such a pleasure to put down on the page and arrange it so it's even more poignant, hopefully. And I think when I was writing that particular paragraph, even that sentence, it's just fun. It was just a fun thing to write, to imagine that guy smoking like that in the rain. Yeah, it was a joy to put down, even though it's a really sad thing.
Yeah. When you write, do you think you saw that in your mind and then described what you saw, or two separate? Maybe it's not a separate.
Yeah, I wonder about that a lot. And like right now, and this could change because I'm not sure I have a solid answer, but I think there are two parts of the imagination working together. So there's the one that just sort of, the image pops into your head. Guy smoking, scrawny, he's under the tree. And that sort of like gears kind of moves into this other realm of the imagination, which is sort of this, I guess maybe the sonic realm, where how could I put that image down in a way that's pleasing to the ear or the mind's ear? So in a perhaps poetic way. So like those two things I think about, those two parts of the imagination I think about when I'm writing now. And as you know, sometimes it's one or the other that appear more prominently. So sometimes the image is so clear in your mind that it's almost like it's birthed completely whole. Other times you have to really work with the wording to get the image right.
I see.
So, and it goes, it's tough to tell which is going to be which.
So we like the doctor. He's just a gentle, stable figure here.
Yeah. So this country doctor guy.
Yep. A boy, a little scrawny like you, but healthy. And he doesn't want to give him the name. So he's, we get an insight to John's self-image in his life. Doesn't like being a coal miner, shoveling coal. His rough life. I mean, he just lost a wife. It's not going to be saying, "Oh, my life I just wanted to grow up like me." He's facing a really hard thing to say. I've just brought a child into the world who's going to be facing the same life as me. Huh.
Right. Yeah, that notion of every father wants their kid, or parent wants their kid to be better off than they were. And I think that's probably true. I mean, I think that's maybe a natural thing for a parent to think. And here we have a character, I think, who realizes his kid is already way behind the eight ball, not just because the mother passed, but because of the circumstance and the sort of the rough life of the coal mines and things like that.
So let's jump ahead to the end of it. And he, let's see. The doctor goes back in the house. The baby's laying there in the wool blanket, not a soft cotton blanket, in a wool blanket, in the cradle on the floor. I'm just going to go right to this last pack. The doctor packed his things and stepped back out onto the porch. He pulled the brim of his hat lower. The baby's father wasn't under the maple tree anymore. There he was by the side of the house with a rusty spade, shoveling up the mud, slinging it into a heap, slashing at buried tree roots, stabbing at the ground. The black red earth, turning it over and over and over. There's a powerful image to end with.
Yeah,
Can you tell us what that means to you? Or, I mean, I guess I could say as a reader, I read it and I think, oh, this, the earth, and he's a miner. I don't know. It's kind of what is going on in his mind, except for the hardship of life.
yeah, I think you're right there, like you said about the mining. Like he's digging in the ground, and that is something that's part of his life. I wanted to use some pretty active verbs, specific, so shoveling, slinging, slashing, stabbing, to indicate that this man is still vibrant, and he's digging his wife's grave, so he understands that life has no choice but to move on. So there's a vibrancy to this young man that we don't perhaps see before. And in that vibrancy, what he's doing is laying the past, sort of letting go of the past, his wife who's passed. So I wouldn't call that necessarily hopeful, but there is a way that there's sort of, or at least what I wanted to convey was that there was some sort of vitality that would continue on in this man's life, or sort of a notion presented to the reader that perhaps all was not lost, even though we don't know what the gain will be after this event.
Mm. Well, I think I have to notice it's a poetic.
Poetics again.
Yeah, here we go again. By the side of the house with a rusty spade, shoveling up the mud, slinging it into a heap, slashing at buried tree roots, stabbing at the ground, black red earth, turning it over and over and over. So that's a good line.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's a very full line. I don't know. That's just one of those things that it really shows the poetics of a well-written.
Yeah, and those darn poetics are, especially in like flash fiction, are so much more poignant and necessary. I think not that they're not necessary in like a 400-word novel, a 400-page novel, but especially when you don't have when you have a very small space, each of your word choices has to be pretty precise, not pretty, very precise, and very active. Each word has a lot of work to do in a piece of flash fiction.
All right. Same with poetry.
Absolutely. I think they share that in common.
Well, Paul, I'm going to wrap this up, and thank you for, I think it was a really meaningful night. Thanks for your
Absolutely
and for sharing with us about it.
Thank you too. I love it. It's been a real pleasure.
And just this is May of 2020. We've been in the global health crisis and staying at home. We're starting to get out now, but so normally the Chattanooga Writers Guild meets at the Chattanooga City Library on the second Tuesday of the month, but we're doing this to be creative with our time.
Absolutely. It's a great way to do it.
Paul Luikart, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And go find this book online, Brief Instructions. And what was the name of the other one?
That's called Animal Heart.
Animal Heart.
It's just a collection of short stories.
Okay. Thank you all. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Let's see. How do I stop this recording? No, I'm not good at it. Here we go.